Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Dynamics Fortnite Fridays.
Where we cover everything dynamics, great and small. Hey, Bart.
Well,
So,
Dan, you don't look like
yeah,
you're in your normal desk.
I am not. I am just like I'm out visiting my son. It's been the weekend. He's playing sports lacrosse at UMass Lowell. So he's got a game tonight. So my wife and I flew out to watch his game.
Well, that's awesome.
So
Well, welcome to the East Coast.
yeah, super awesome. It's like we're supposed to get like there's a bunch of snow on the ground. There's supposed to be snow tomorrow. And then again on Tuesday. So we're leaving on Wednesday morning. So hopefully it won't be as bad as it is in Minnesota with the snow and the cold.
Hopefully, I mean, Minnesota, we got
So
almost nothing right now, but there's supposed to be 3 to 6 inches over the weekend, so it could be
yeah.
fun.
Well, Mother Nature's playing a joke on us, so you got a dad joke for me, Bart.
Oh, it's a bad one, but it's topical.
Okay. Okay.
So I had a wonderful ski vacation with my family this last week. So why was my son once in a while depressed when we would get off the ski lift?
Um, he was too uplifted. I don't know.
He knew it was all downhill from there.
Okay, okay. Is that the right theme? But okay.
Right.
Okay.
At least it was themed. What do you
Okay,
got? What do you
so
got?
okay, so it's like I got my bad dad jokes again. I got this from Joe and Ann Gutman. Okay, it takes guts to be an organ donor. Okay, I'm lucky I brought two.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? Dogs can't operate MRI machines, but cats can. Alrighty.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
there you
yeah.
go.
Yeah, okay. As always, our content is much better than our jokes. So what do you got for me, Bart?
Well, let's just share the screen and jump right in. So, with Power Platform, just a reminder for everyone, if you have not yet registered for Powerful Devs, that Powerful Devs conference is early next week. So you can still jump in. It is online only as a virtual event, and there'll be lots of great content on that. So get in there and learn some things with Powerful Devs. Also, Power Automate Desktop. They come out with updates at least once a month, and the January update is out. There are some nice things with summarizing actions just to let AI tell you what this desktop flow is doing, which is kind of a nice thing. A big thing is a child flow can now run in parallel with its parent flow. And that can not only help with just how fast the things execute, because you can now have two things running in parallel, but there are certain things with pop-ups in target applications that because it always used to have things sequentially work and one thing had to complete before the next one could get started if you were doing parent-child things, that it was very difficult to get all those things to work right. So hopefully this will help makers do things better. If you still have access around, we've now got some better controls for access in Power Automate Desktop. Some of the variable types for Excel, Word, and Outlook are now supported as both input and output variables in your desktop flows. We've got a new retry policy that can be applied to a block. So not just an action, but a whole block of actions, and you can have the retry happen if anything happens within the block. So that's another nice new feature. So some pretty good enhancements in Power Automate Desktop this month. We also have turned on quite a few security features in Power Automate Desktop. So credentials with Key Vault or CyberArk, pretty big thing to make sure your credentials are never just stored in plain text anywhere, but are always grabbed from a authority. And ability to do certificate-based auth with MFA. So if you would like to do that certificate-based auth in getting logged in to the right platforms within your desktop flows, whether it's in the attended or unattended scenario, that this now works. And credentials for specific actions is another thing. So that if we are storing credentials securely, that we can within a specific action say, well, we want to use the credentials for SAP and what's shown on the screen to log in and do something. So you've got to be on Power Automate Desktop build 2411 or newer, but once you do, you can do that at the action level. Pretty big deal. For the hosted machine groups, we can now let VNet routing work to have private network support for those machine groups. So big deal for the networking side of things, as well as network level authentication support for intra-ID joined machines or hybrid joined machines, so that when you're doing remote desktop connections, that you can make sure that they are done in the most secure way possible. So nice security enhancements all there for Power Automate Desktop. Nice blog post put together by James Olenek that is just a good summary of the goodness that Dataverse brings, not just for makers and the ability to get data into analytics solutions like Fabric, but the ability to store this data in a place that is already hooked directly into Copilot Studio for knowledge, for actions, for the ability to use all the good data that you're storing in your agentic workloads much more easily, because Dataverse is just pre-configured to do all that stuff. So it's a really good synopsis of why Dataverse is a super valuable platform to use for storing all of your information that makes sense to store in it. Copilot Studio, while we're on that topic, they had quite a few updates come out in January, so a nice summary came out. Copilot Chat, I'm sure all of you are familiar with. We talked about it on previous shows as well, that option for being able to let any user in your organization use Copilot, whether they have the M365 Copilot license or not, with a pay-go meter is available now. And that pay-go meter can also be used with Copilot Studio agents if you don't have message packs that you have purchased. We've already talked about that enhanced answer capability with SharePoint, so that it will allow you to use the semantic index that is under M365 Copilot in your Copilot Studio bots now by flipping on that toggle. And maybe I'll just scroll on down here to remind everybody, we covered this on a previous show, but it's that toggle to toggle on enhanced search results. Knowledge tuning. We've mentioned this, but it's getting a little bit more robust for being able to fine tune how knowledge sources return results, and to designate certain of your knowledge sources as verified and trusted so that they get prioritized above other knowledge sources in your results. So that's also another really nice thing. Image handling, they have moved forward with that inside of the product. So it's great to know that you can just upload images and let the generative AI analyze those images and do things with them. So learning about that is certainly a big deal for some scenarios. And a reminder, we talked a little bit about this last show, but the DLP policies are kind of in that soft enabled state. And later this month in February, where they will just become enabled so that they are fully enacted. Lots of stuff out there for Copilot Studio. Automated testing. Lots of goodness around this is moving forward. So a lot of this is really just an argument for automated testing. And I think most of our enterprise customers are already doing automated testing at scale for a lot of things. And one of the things in the Power Platform, especially the Power Apps and Canvas Apps framework, is that automated testing was there in product with the tests functionality, but it was fairly limited and quite slow. So there is a new offering called Test Engine for those Canvas apps, and that it's out there in preview right now. There's going to be an entire section of Powerful Devs where Test Engine is going to be showcased with all the new enhancements that have been added to it just recently and are sort of in preview mode right now. So if you can join the Powerful Devs conference and go to that session, you'll learn all kinds of great things about what we are doing to improve automated testing for a lot of the Power Platform assets with the Test Engine. So pay attention to that. Power Apps, of course, we have lots of new features in Power Apps. We've talked already about the Plan Designer being in public preview now. It will become generally available within the next few months. That includes working with existing tables in the data workspace, being able to do some interesting things with user-defined functions, user-defined types, and enhanced component properties that are now in I believe it's public preview instead of experimental format. And the new SQL Server environment variables, I think we covered that on the last show as well. And this one is actually new to me, the PostgreSQL as a virtual connector. So being able to connect to that just like a SQL Server or SharePoint or some of the other things like Salesforce that we have built virtual connectors for that are just there in Power Platform. Well, Postgres is now there as well. So pretty awesome stuff. And last couple of things, being able to manage which views that are the public views in Dataverse by security role. Nice new feature so that you can limit those and only show the right roles to people in the right, show the right views to people in certain roles without having to make a separate app in order to do that is a really nice feature. And then preventing data exfiltration with client app access controls. So this is a governance feature in the Power Platform Admin Center that's going to allow you to say, I am going to make sure that only certain apps are allowed to run within a environment. It'll let you make sure that if an app isn't kind of on the whitelisted list, that has made it into an environment that no one can use it essentially. So pretty nice new feature for controlling apps in your Power Platform environment. Unfortunately, as of right now, this link isn't working, and I'm hopeful that that gets fixed pretty soon. Also, React and Fluent-based virtual code components are generally available. I think we have already covered that, but it's pretty awesome stuff. Lots of new things in the learning and documentation updates, so pay attention to that, but that's a really nice cadre of updates coming through Power Apps. The rest of these are things that have come through the Admin Center Message Center, and I'm just going to quickly cover a couple of them with the public representations of them. So with Cloudflows, we turned on a feature recently that says if it's a Cloudflow that is a instant Cloudflow that you have to click to start, that re-triggering one of those instant flows is impossible unless you go flip on a tenant-wide setting that you required PowerShell and is showing up in the UI soon for control on that. Well, we're changing the way it works as of February 28th, that if that is set for disabled for being able to re-trigger a Cloudflow, that will only be if you're not the owner of that flow. That if you do own a flow and you're like in working mode of trying to test the functionality and re-swizzle how it's functioning, that you'll be able to re-trigger those in kind of that test harness if you're the owner of the flow, even if that overarching setting is disabled. So that's actually a really nice improvement. For environment groups, so big governance posture capability within the Power Platform as well, that Copilot settings are now going to get added into the group functionality for AI prompts, for enabling it for makers, for Power App component frameworks, for Canvas apps, and in the release channel. And that these are already out there with AI-generated descriptions and Copilot generative AI settings. So we're just enhancing what the environment group capabilities are for managing all those capabilities. So nice new enhancement there for governance folks. Also, the security configuration from the Power Platform Admin Center. So being able to use some of the easy buttons inside of the new Admin Center for setting up security on an environment. Well, those have always been there for tenant admins or Power Platform admins, but not just for an environment admin. But that is changing the first week of February. If you are an environment admin only, you will be able to go to the Power Platform Admin Center and use all those really nice security settings and helpful hints and easy buttons for getting them turned on the right way in the Power Platform Admin Center in the environments where you are an admin, even if you don't have some of those higher level tenant-wide roles. So nice new enhancement for giving a little more granular control over those things. Last thing I'm going to cover on the Power Platform only side is within Power Platform Pipelines functionality, the solution upgrade process is changing. And we did it because if it's set the way we're changing it to, it will not overwrite stuff that's already there. It will only add new. It was set to always overwrite everything within the pipeline, and doing it this way to allow it to recognize what's already there and not re-import the stuff that isn't changing will make these pipelines be able to deploy the solutions roughly twice as fast. So that's a really nice enhancement. The thing to make sure that you're understanding about it is if you need to remove active customizations in a target environment because someone has done some sort of dev work in there and put something in that unmanaged layer, you're going to have to send that command through in order to get rid of those active customizations. Where before we were sort of taking care of a lot of that before or on your behalf in the way we were deploying those within pipeline. So just be aware there might need to be some changes in the way you architect your pipeline deployment, but it should happen twice as fast now if you've done it right. All right, so that's the Power Platform updates. In customer engagement, I'm not really even going to click into these because I think they're a little too wordy to show well, but they are 3 really good blog posts about all the various places we are helping sellers with our agentic capabilities in the Dynamics 365 sales module. So it's really good to understand where some of those agents are really helping with the qualification agent and some of the other things that are going on that are AI functional and making it easier for sellers to focus on the right stuff. Mobile offline, it's been around for a while now. It works pretty well, but we just added the ability to turn on Azure Application Insight monitoring of offline syncing to get rich telemetry of what's going on in detail across all of the users at the same time who are doing mobile offline sync, so that you can look for patterns to see if there are certain things that are not syncing well or that are taking too long and you want to go change your rule set or whatever else. You just get a whole lot more telemetry and monitoring of what's going on in that offline sync. So great new enhancement. Last one is more of an announcement than anything else. So in our customer service module, we have had these AI agents that have been introduced in kind of this last wave of functionality, doing all kinds of great things, helping the human agent out who's trying to provide that customer service. Well, the agents have gotten so good at this point that we are deprecating and even removing the functionality in our customer service functionality in the apps themselves, called Smart Assist. That was a really nice combined search algorithm that searched the knowledge base and searched similar cases to try to just put those front and center in front of the agent without them having to re-query things. But our AI agents are now doing all that on your behalf anyway and are doing an even better job than Smart Assist that was kind of just a dumb lexical search. So we're getting rid of Smart Assist. So if you are relying on Smart Assist still, start thinking about how you're going to replace that with the agentic functionality that we are providing as part of the service module as well. With that, that's my updates. So Dan, take it away. And you are muted, Dan. So remember to unmute, Dan. There you go. Now you got it.
Yeah, okay. You know what? Everybody does it nowadays, right? So I'm not the only one. So for me, this is a nice update. It's like the big updates are lots of news. It's like, for me, I always we always have to understand what's going on first in the ERP systems. You got to test it, make sure you're going to actually update that through the data manager or through the feature management systems within Dynamics. So let's get started out with some commerce. Not a ton of updates for this commerce, but a nice little update, right? So first is an enable receipt copy printing in France. So this is a localization for France. So not a ton of stuff, but you just you need to know that for your POS systems, for your multinationals out there. For HR, there's not a ton on HR, but something worthwhile. It's like, so I mentioned about a half year back, we just re-platformed this back and brought it back into the whole finance and supply chain platform. And there wasn't going to be a whole lot of updates until then. Well, now we're making a lot of updates. So So let's drill down into this. So first of all, you're going to disable assignment for duplicated identification numbers. No big deal for that, right? So this just like, for two divergent systems, make sure we have no inconsistencies, right? And now this one is recruiting enhancements. We're actually making some recruiting enhancements using co-pilots to ensure that you get the best recruit. How do we actually send it out? How do we integrate back into the different systems for the HR deployment on that? But now we have some real feature updates. So if we look at benefits management, so the benefits, so it's like if you have, a benefits open enrollment plan, you can actually see their benefit plans right from the employee workbench. It's a whole lot easier. It just looks a lot better. And you can also compare those benefits from what you had last year. So I do this every year. Okay, what do I have last year? What did I do for vision and dental and so on and so forth and 401k? Now you can actually plan this versus what you had last year and how much you're paying in versus, what you may pay in this year. There's an easier checkout screen just to validate all the different steps that you're going through. What are you going to be doing for, family insurance? What are you going to do for vision? Do you have like the legal plan, so on and so forth, if your company offers that? Also, performance management is an HTML editor, right, for performance, for comments in that. And then benefits, it's like we just made it easier to streamline the employee entry. So before it was like I used to say, it is a system that's defined, or it was actually designed by accountants for accountants, not HR people. We made it so it's really accessible to people. Now, there's also some features that are turned on. So there's been some updates, and we're going to see a whole lot more updates in HR as we're going further, and it'll keep on accelerating. Now, for cross-platform, there's only one real update, but this is a big one, right? So it says user security governance. And so what does that mean? So for users, it's like you can have the license. It's like if you have a supply chain, you actually might have a role, maybe for a purchasing agent or a sales agent. For accounting, you might have an AP person, AR, fixed assets, whatever it might be. But so they have different roles and they have different security access rights and privileges upon that. Well, you have segregation of duties type of things. It's like, so if you're actually a purchasing agent and you can do purchasing, you don't want this person to actually do the whole payables because it's like that's ripe for fraud, right? So you don't want to have the person that you're actually paying out to that vendor actually work with that vendor for a multitude of reasons. So we had systems before, but they weren't awesome. So we acquired some IP for that, so we can actually look at the role management, the license auditing, seeing what they're doing. So there's configurations, just a whole lot easier to work with because it was a pretty arduous task before. So a lot of my customers have been asking for that. We acquired some IP here this last year. Now it's released in 10.0.43. So all my IT admin people within the Dynamics finance and supply chain are cheering right now. So that's a pretty big one. Now, for supply chain, I'm going to cover next week. I'm going to do project operations and finance. So I'm just going to cover a little bit on supply chain with this update, because there's quite a bit on this. So if we look at the supply chain, first of all, in this release, there's some enhanced user updates for Copilot. So it's like you can add the thumbs up or thumbs down so your administrators can take a look at this and see how we're doing, right? But we also have some written feedback. So, okay, why was this not good? Why was this good? Why was this a good Copilot? Why was this augmented for you appropriately? So that's a new feature in this. Also, we have some enhanced vendor rebate information. So now you can review and post rebates. So you can actually resubmit and edit those if you pull them back instead of actually have to cancel all of them and redo the whole thing, right? And so there's some advanced rebate posting management and workflows for those rebates. So it's like, okay, here's the rebates that we're going to have for this supplier. It's got to go through for how much money that we're actually going to get. Here's the workflow that we have to get approval to get that back. So some enhancements in there on supply chain. So first of all, for asset management, on this one, you can adjust the forecast hours to match the scheduled work orders. So what this is saying is like, okay, we have a forecast, what we think, it's like we're anticipated, often kind of like, okay, the work instructions of how long we anticipate this this repair or this maintenance to actually take. So what this does, it'll like when you click an option on the configuration, say, hey, I want that forecast updated and reflect any update, the work instructions, the anticipated hours for each of that repair or maintenance. But also, if you make some changes in that forecast, it'll actually update in there, so it'll update back. So it just makes it a whole lot easier. There's also role-based access control for the lifecycle status. So on the lifecycle status, you can have it as created, in process. You can define it as like approved, completed, so on and so forth, ended or just entered. But what we did is we can assign roles, so only people with a certain status, right, or a certain role configuration can actually update that or have control over that status. So if you have actually somebody doing the maintenance work out there, you might say, okay, we can actually have this completed, but you don't want them to go and end it and do all the financial updates or so on and so forth. So that has been some changes on that. On master planning, there's been a few changes. So first of all, you calculate catch weight quantities for catch weight products. So for instance, like if you buy a block of cheese at the grocery store, it might be $1.90, okay, $5 a pound. But if it's like, a half a pound, yeah, you're paying $2.50. So you actually pay it by the actual weight. That's called a catch weight. It's 1 unit of cheese, but it might have different weights, and each of those pieces of cheese might have different weights. Well, what we have within master plan is we want to take a look at, and we want to make sure that it takes that into consideration, that catch weights. So it will say how much you have in hand based upon that catch weight and those eaches, and ensure that master planning and generates the correct purchase order so it actually matches that out. So versus on a anticipated or standardized catch weight on that. We also took into consideration for master planning is dimension-based product configuration. There's 3 types of dimension type of things. It's like, so if you do like color, size, style, or configuration, so on and so forth. So do we want to actually have that taken into consideration for those orders, right? And do we want to use this for grouping or splitting planned orders? So it takes those different configurations into consideration. We also, or actually generate the orders based upon their components and the bill of materials for those configurations. Also on the master planning, do we want to actually have the orders that continue to peg? So like if you have a made to order environment, you're only going to make what you have orders for. So it's made to order. So if I have orders for 10, I'm going to actually make 10 based upon the shrinkage and things like that for that bill of material. But let's just assume there's 10 of those for this purpose. And so what this does is so we can actually enable that for pegging. So it's going to be used for its initial purchase, right? Or you can use it for first come, first serve. We're going to get some more later, so we can actually steal from Peter to pay Paul type of that thing. But we also enable this, so if you actually split this out, it's like, okay, we have another order. We're gonna have 5 for myself, and I'm gonna have 5 for Bart, and kind of split those out, and it'll take that into consideration, right? So we can enable those scenarios. There's also enablement for step consumption. So for certain things, it's like, so if I'm making 100, I'm putting things on a lathe and I'm making 100 cylindrical units. Well, let's see, if you have to use like a carbon fiber bit, a piece of tooling to actually put on that piece of material, and you might use like 10 of those, or 1 bit for every 10 of those that you actually have to make, for instance. That's an exaggeration, but it's an example. So that's like a step consumption. It's like, so for every step that you have 100, that's another 10 that we're going to use. And so that's taken into consideration. So we're looking at planning and optimization being at par with the old master planning system so far. So on sales and marketing, we have to consider like reserved quantity or not for ATP. If it's reserved, do we want to consider that available to promise? Typically you don't, because you don't want to steal from Peter to pay Paul, because that's reserved for a reason, right? You'd have to have soft pegging or hard pegging. So reserved hard pegging, we want to make sure that's reserved. So, but that's an option based upon how your organization runs. There's another master planning, so we'll clean up data from failed demand running, just tighten up the database, keep it a little clean. For procurement, there's an auto assign auto charges. So if you're running an RFQ and there might be a charges assigned to that, we want to make sure that it's automatically assigned. So there might be a 10% surcharge, or if you're going to Waffle House, there's a 50-cent surcharge for each egg that you use. So it's a 3-egg omelet, that's an extra $1.50. Yeah, for a surcharge, right? So anyway, so that's taken into consideration. So also in the warehouse, there's some logs. but also there are some generally available features now. So I've talked about these in previous shows. It's like, so asset management, we talked about the print work order management. So before it was just a PDF, now we can actually do other documents on that. Inventory accounting, reporting current. So we've talked about that. Dimension history for documents, cleaned up that, right? The inventory visibility service, remember, it's like for different divergent services, we want to actually know what the inventory availability is at a centralized location. It's using IOM and that service, of course, itself. And now that's, it's like we have an available to promise that goes across on that. And then we have transaction visibility into this. And we've talked about those things. A few other things about master planning that are actually enabled now on this. So ATP calculations like performance and merging queuing, so it's a lot faster. And in, like, inherits the status for intercompany plan demands we talked about 10.0.40. So it updates to actually shipped. It'll update on the other side for that intercompany sales order purchase order. For master planning CTP, now that's different from ATP. So ATP is like, okay, we have planned work orders out there already. CTP is like, what's capable of promise? What can I make and when can I get this done, right? But on the sales order, it actually ran in batch. You have to run it. It was really slow. For my opinion, it was kind of kludgy. Now it's actually near real time. So it's like, that's the way it should be because you want a real time capable of a promise by the way it's defined, right? A few other things for purchase parameters, track components. This is a big deal for the MES system or shop floor control, manufacturing execution system. So we can track serial numbers and lot numbers right on the device on there. And so the funny thing is I was going through some meetings this morning, and that was one of the requirements that my customer needed on that. Unified pricing, I've talked about the unified pricing. So think of that as similar. If you know the commerce pricing, we can actually have buy one, get one. You have like, different level discounts, certain things like that, threshold and things like that. That is now available, and it's trait-based pricing on that. So anyways, so lots of things that are now fully turned on and fully available in 10.0.43. So quite a bit. I'm pretty excited about this. I'm really excited about the April update when we actually get that. But with that, Bart, that's all the content that I have this week. So
There was
in
just a
addition,
bit there on the
yeah,
supply chain side, right?
yeah, there's going to be a
Yeah,
lot in finance. We talk about that in a couple of weeks too. So
for sure.
yeah,
Well, awesome.
so
Well,
yep.
I think that's a wrap for the show then. Obviously, pay attention to all of those solution updates that are out there, and looking forward to seeing everyone in a fortnight.
All right, take care, everybody. See you.